Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Szul from Rome Blockchain Labs. In today's conversation, I have Ashley from the Metis team. Ashley, how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing excellent. So, Ashley, for those of you who aren't familiar with yourself, the role you play at Metis, and really Metis as a network, can you fill our viewers in on what exactly you're looking to do in the blockchain space?
Sure. Yeah. So Metis is a layer 2 scaling solution on Ethereum, but really we're a platform for the Web3 economy. So our focus is on bringing blockchain to the people. We want the accessibility to increase. We want to make it easy for people to understand. Not just like the financial aspect of cryptocurrency, but really like the wealth of potential that's there in Web3 for people to create. And then we want to make that accessible for users and for developers alike. So that's kind of like our main focus. And I'm the education programs manager. So I joined the team in January, straight out of a high school geography classroom and with no Web3 experience. So I've learned so much, and it's been really awesome to be like the bridge between this technical piece where people are so like speaking a different language almost, and then
Yep.
the regular person who's just like, I thought this was a scam. What are you talking about? So
You'll hear that. You'll hear that. Wonderful. So it seems like you made a really big jump to come into the blockchain space at large and really landed at a fantastic team at Metis. The more people that I talk with, be they on video calls or at presentations and conferences, that seems to be the common trend is that most people entering the blockchain space actually have almost no blockchain experience or coding experience at all. Could you kind of share your own personal experiences and journey to people who might be considering coming into work in blockchain or DeFi or the broader tech space at large?
yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to note that like, I mean, this is still a really new space. So it's so easy to come in without any experience because there's not a lot of people who do have experience in it. But I think in order to build a Web3 that supports like new structures for our society that are solving problems, we really need diverse experiences and opinions and ideas. And that comes from people who don't really know what's going on, but bringing their previous experience to the game. So for me, I'd been a teacher my whole life, and I loved education so much, but I felt trapped by the structure and the system
Mhm.
and how I was able to serve my kids and where I wasn't. And so I started looking for solutions where I could work in a space that felt education motivated, but
Mhm.
maybe was in a different system. And I started looking all over the place, and I found Crypto Chicks on
Yep.
LinkedIn. And Crypto
Oh,
Chicks is a nonprofit that was founded by the Metis co-founder, Elena Sinelnikova. And the job description said someone who has experience in education, but you don't have to know anything about crypto. And I was like, great. So I applied and I talked with her, and she was like, wow, I think you're entrepreneurial and you have these exciting ideas, but you don't really know anything. I think this is the kind of like fresh energy that we need. So she invited me to join Crypto Chicks, but also Metis. So I work with both organizations now, all because I saw a problem and I had no idea how to fix it, but I just started looking.
absolutely. And that entire concept of education and educational motivation for attracting people into the space really does hold true. I remember when I first started myself in blockchain, I was back in it was relatively recently in the near the middle end of 2020, and that was right before DeFi summer happened. So educational content was pretty much non-existent for decentralized finance. You had some really dense white papers and like a couple YouTube videos. But I remember like I would sit there for hours reading the same paper over and over and over again, trying my best to understand it. And now just fast forward, 2 years, and there's a wealth of information now coming out. Even at Rome Blockchain Labs, we're actually launching a podcast called Blocksplain, where we take complex concepts in the blockchain space and bring them down into terminology that everybody can understand. So in a quick 15, 20-minute episode, you can learn all about what a blockchain is or learn all about decentralized finance at a very high level. So in that, what role do you see education playing in the emergence and growth of blockchain, both for Metis and the space beyond?
Awesome. Well, it's really exciting that you're starting the podcast. I've done that with Crypto Chicks. We have like a little 10-minute podcast called Crypto Chicks Corner, and they're just like really brief oversights of like the major concepts. So that's exciting. I'm looking forward to listening.
I'd love to have you on, Ashley.
Cool. That would be fun. Yeah, maybe we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the role for education, I think it kind of boils down to trust for me. Like, we talk so much about like trustlessness and Web3, and I understand the concept and like why people kind of harp on that. And I understand the value of not needing to like know necessarily the person you're interacting with to have some sort of transaction. But there is such a level of trust involved for people who don't understand what a smart contract is or how to read code or like what is this blockchain thing and why does that work. And you see so many headlines about scams, and so I feel like the education piece is like the individual empowerment. Like you don't necessarily have to trust what someone is selling you if you know the right questions to ask and where to look for the right information so that you can make informed decisions for yourself.
Certainly. Yeah. Asking the right questions really is such a valuable mindset that not all the people really have to make outside the space anymore in life. I mean, we look at society because of the ability for regulators to step into almost every aspect of our life. It's sometimes people might say overstep, but for things like food, for things like banking and finance, the average person really has everything laid out before them, at least in the US, and they don't have to worry about much. But when you come into cutting edge technology, all of a sudden, it's a bit like a Wild West, where anybody can launch a flashy website. They can make a pretty legit looking white paper, but actually be a scam on top of that. What type of questions would you recommend people ask or consider when they're looking at these projects? So like, for example, one of the things that I always look for is whenever I'm considering buying into a project or if I'm considering investing, is actually to look at, is the team public? Is their face on the website? Do they have LinkedIn attached to that? Because while anonymous projects aren't necessarily illegitimate, it's a much lower likelihood that they will be if they have the team public. What kind of steps do you follow?
Yeah, that's a great one. That's one of the first things I'll suggest too. And there are certainly some projects out there, I'm sure, don't ask me for an example, but that where team members are, not docs, they're anonymous and they still, have integrity in their work and they put forth amazing products. But yeah, if I can't see your face, then I'm a little concerned about why the anonymity thing is such a big deal for you. But for me, I think I usually tell people if they can't engage with the team and ask questions and receive like some pretty interactive engagement with them in their community, if they look for some documentations and don't understand something and they reach out and they're not getting a response, or like those things are red flags for me. So it's okay to not understand everything. Like I go and look at projects all the time, and if I don't get it and I reach out on Twitter or Discord or Telegram and like nobody can answer my questions or I'm not even really recognized, then for me, I'm out,
Yeah, that's a great one, because for projects who have integrity, being able to address even those hard questions from the dev team or from the founding team is tremendously important for the growth and development of a project. Because as you emerge into the blockchain space, be you educational content creation, developer, business, anything, even marketing, what you're going to realize is that you don't have all the answers. There is no way for anybody in this space to know everything. If somebody says that they're a foremost expert on this, unless they've been in the space for 10 plus years, I would not trust them, because it moves so fast. It evolves so quickly. What was a blockchain 5 years ago is no longer a blockchain today. It's a dinosaur. So moving forward a bit from that, tell us a bit about Metis and what you guys are doing with the reputation. I understand it's a reputation
power. Yeah.
Power. Thank you. So tell us, what exactly is Metis looking to accomplish with their emergence of the reputation power initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm not going to get the year right, but a few years ago, Vitalik published this paper through the Ethereum Foundation about Soulbound Tokens, and essentially this idea of needing something to represent like the human piece of blockchain, of Web3. And when we started thinking at Metis about how to make blockchain accessible and individual centric, something that could serve just the individual user, but also companies, because we're also building out like corporate structures in a blockchain space. How can we support this lack of identity? When we think about things like lending, that getting a loan
Yep.
is an incredible financial tool, and for so many people it's inaccessible. And in DeFi, there's that socio-political or geographic barriers is gone now. Like, you don't have to qualify, but typically you have to be over collateralized, and that is a
Mhm.
huge barrier for a lot of people. And so the idea of reputation power is essentially that your on-chain achievements, collaborations, any work that you do, your participation in governance, your contributions to a DAO, all of these things can be minted in a non-transferable NFT. So essentially, you're like, hey, I am who I say I am. And then we have a vision for eventually maybe this being some system that could support under collateralized lending, or even like an on-chain sort of resume in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to check my references because they're minted in this NFT that is distributed to me from this dApp that I worked with, So that's kind of what we're hoping to build, the infrastructure for people to build community and to establish the work that they do and the contributions they make to the space.
Excellent, Ashley. That really is a very forward-thinking application that Metis is putting out there. Because community, in one sense, it can be built within an anonymous sphere. I mean, as we see, DeFi has grown over the past 5 years or so into something that's really is one of the forefront, leading edges of finance. Yet at the same time, in order for communities to move beyond just money and actually go into decentralized art, go into communication, go into information, all these things that blockchain can facilitate, but really haven't, at least in my opinion, been overly leveraged for. There has to be some sort of either semi-anonymous or non-anonymous soul binding of that information to a wallet address that demonstrates that, listen, I am reputable, I am engaged, I am reliable. These are my credentials for accomplishing that. And you spoke a bit about the emergence of new technologies for under collateralized lending, and I can actually see this really opening up the potential for a gig economy that's even more spread out than at present. What exciting opportunities do you see arising from the reputation power that Metis is launching?
Yeah, I think like the idea that, for me joining the Web3 space, I had no idea really what I was getting into, and that there were so many people I didn't know what a DAO was, and how people were getting paid for contributing to all these different projects. And then very soon after I joined the team, I went to ETH Denver, and I met people who were working on so many projects, and they traveled full time, and all they did was like do the things that made them excited. And I was like, wow, this is a space where people can be rewarded for their unique gifts and their like individual strengths without having to fit into this box of a job description. And reputation power to me offers like a backbone for that. So not only can you come in and say, here's what I like to do, this is what I can offer to your team, without feeling like, I'm in this 9 to 5 full-time commitment kind of thing.
Yep.
But now here are my credentials. Like these are all the projects that I've contributed to. These are my strengths. You don't have to trust some resume that I've put up or these references that I've hand selected that you can call, and it's probably my cousin. So that's a big thing for me as far as like the gig economy goes, is like now people can really leverage what they're doing in this space to establish some level of credibility.
Certainly. It's funny that whole using your cousin as a reference. I've never done that. I never had to, thankfully, but I'm sure people have. And a lot of people in the space talk about kind of institutions and enterprise and the real world coming into blockchain. But what I see the reputation power initiative actually doing is taking something from within blockchain and potentially reaching outwards. Because if we can change our mindset about what reliability, about what honesty is, one, of course, taking somebody's word for it, but also having the credentials to back it up, or demonstrating that you don't have the credentials that you're purporting, really is going to change the way that collaboration and that employment do work in the future. Because the world's only getting more virtual. Everybody's beginning to come online in some form or fashion. So having something that can demonstrate credibility is going to be tremendously revolutionary. So great luck to you guys with this.
Yeah,
And
thanks. We're excited about, I think like even individual companies could just thinking about the way that they could reward their community for being, active in what they do. And they can decide, like in our system, individual apps can decide like, oh, I want to place more value on governance, or I want to place more value on transactions. So they can kind of create their own culture with this system, which is really cool, because not only does that like benefit the user, but now I feel like people who are wanting to build something bigger, they have tangible tools to say, this is what we value, and here's how we can support you in contributing to that.
Absolutely. That's another fantastic point. When you're able to actually differentiate value and have a kind of a scale of incentivization across one protocol, all of a sudden you really do change the approach that people have from that. Because as the either centralized directors or as the DAO begin to take over and direct the emergence of a platform, you can actually shift your attention on the specific things and, like you said, reward and incentivize that to bring about the type of motivation that's necessary. That can really hypercharge the growth of a DAO when you can differentiate vectors of growth. And that kind of leads into something else that Metis is very well known for, and it's a very exciting opportunity, which is the Dak ideology. Could you kind of explain to that for people who are unfamiliar with it, what the Dak represents and how that differs from DAOs?
Sure. Yeah. So we all, if you're unfamiliar with a DAO, if you're coming to this like brand new Web3, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. And essentially it's just a group of people coming together to work for a common cause, just like any other organization.
Yes.
But a lot of like the procedures are governed by smart contracts. Like a lot of the internal mechanisms can be governed that way. But with any human organization, there are issues, right? So like
Hmm.
if you've ever been a part of a DAO, you've likely experienced some inefficiencies, either with like apathy, people's general excitement for something kind of falls off, or there's like a lack of knowledge, or the governance structure is less than ideal. I mean, people might hold a lot of tokens and be able to have a lot of say in, governance decisions, but maybe they don't necessarily have the expertise to be the ones to make that call.
Yeah.
There's no real way to like assign permission and role-based things.
Yeah.
And so a DAC is a decentralized autonomous corporation. And essentially the idea is that we keep this under the underlying principle of a DAO, the decentralization, the inclusivity, the accessibility, but we add in functionality for kind of like regular enterprise functions. So
Hmm.
being able to put the right person in charge of the right things,
Yep.
having functions like human resources or accounting or financial reporting, the things that you would need to be transparent, but maybe take up a lot of resources,
Yeah.
can now be easily done on chain. So you can still customize what you're doing in blockchain, but still keep, I mean, to be honest, some things are not necessarily served by being on a public ledger. So it's nice to be able to say
Yeah.
like, this is going to go here and this is going to be separate.
Wonderful. Yeah, this is really is a fantastic competitive edge for entrepreneurs, because if I'm able to one, secure the structure and the really the structure of my company on a blockchain, while delineating what I want to be maintained publicly versus stored privately, instantiate roles, and also maintain governance, but in a way that isn't limited by the anonymity that's inherent within DAOs. You really do shift the way that people begin to understand corporate formation. And I can also see quite a few, probably states and even countries interested in this type of technology. Because if you can tell somebody, listen, I'll incorporate in your state, pay some taxes, but I can hire completely globally and still be within your regulations, they'd be like, sign me up right away.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, like, how powerful would it be too if like a nonprofit organization was able to say, thank you for your donation. Now you can look at this ledger and see exactly where every dollar of your donation went. Or, even within like your local government, I would love to see, what my tax dollars actually went to seeing. And, so many people, I think, have this mistrust when it comes to public entities. And I think this could be a really powerful way to support rebuilding that.
I think so. Yeah, I can absolutely understand the value of either public initiatives or nonprofits being able to trustlessly verify exactly where expenses are being utilized. I mean, I remember a couple years ago there was a report that came out that some of the best well-known nonprofits in the world are actually run pretty much like any greedy company was, where a lot of funds were going to the board members, a lot of stuff were being used on lavish expenses. And that's also, this is something, it's a differentiation I've seen in the DeFi space. You have your bad actors, as with everything else in the world, but there is an ethos prevalent within almost all blockchain that collaboration really is the future. It's no longer about competition in the traditional aspects. Of course, you have business competition here and there, but I actually find that it's being weeded out. It's the initiatives, the protocols, the platforms who understand that by adding one and one together, we don't actually get two, we get 2.5, we get three, because we're able to create new value. And this is something that hopefully, fingers crossed, will actually permeate the greater consciousness of the globe far into the future and outside of the blockchain space. Yeah, that's really something that at least at Rome Blockchain Labs, we've carried through unwaveringly since we've begun. We were talking earlier, Ashley, before we started recording, about how at Rome Blockchain Labs, abundance is actually our primary understanding. We see that there is more than enough in the world for everybody to have everything they need and then some. It's just a matter of being able to distribute the opportunity and that value equally. And for us, blockchain, for our laboratory, is one of the leading technologies that facilitates this. It's trustless, it's transparent, it's open, and you can also build anything you want on top of that. So you can actually create value, be they asset-backed tokens or securities that are open on markets 24/7 in ways that you can't do in traditional markets and with traditional technology at present. And we've actually seen that at integrating Metis with the Rome terminal. We have NetSwap, we have Hermes, we have all these new platforms coming in. So that way, if I'm just a normal person walking into DeFi, I can go to the terminal, connect my wallet, and then I can open up some of the leading applications across all the top networks right there and use them all at the same time. What kind of opportunity do you see coming from that for Metis users?
Well, I think that, one of the things that makes Metis stand apart from, maybe other chains is that we're able to kind of have the security and decentralization of the Ethereum network, but we offer the scalability piece. So really fast transactions and, they're cheap. We're the cheapest L2 fees. So I think being able to, the incredible like user interface that you have on your aggregator, where people can go and see like all of the different things that they're involved in one place. That's really powerful. And I think people will be able, in that kind of comparison type of interface, be able to see the power that Metis really does have to offer. And I love that, what you were saying with abundance being kind of like the driving force. I think in our economy in general, and just kind of like the typical way of thinking, even the way that we define value in something is based on this idea of scarcity. Something is more valuable if there's less of it out there. And there's some math to that. Like if I own $1 out of $100, well, then I own a greater percentage versus if there are 1,000 out there in the world. But it's an interesting idea that, we've kind of based all of our value around this scarcity concept. And so the idea that in a blockchain space, people can come in and kind of have a more even playing field, and that, a girl in Somalia can have the same platform and access to tools as, a trader in Silicon Valley. And so those things are something that we really think about when we're considering user-friendly ways for people to see our tools, and then also to compare, like, why is this network going to be easier and cheaper and a better space for me to build and create wealth for myself and tap into that abundance versus some of these other things that are out there. And I love the collaboration piece. Like you'll never hear Metis saying like our competitors don't have it right. I mean, the beauty of the open source code space is that we're all innovating together, and your success is my success. And that paradigm shift in Web3 can be really powerful if we allow it to permeate to like our individual actions, the way that we work in our jobs every day. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm pumped that Rome Blockchain is on that same path.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always great to see friends in this space who understand kind of that same general direction we're going about it in our own way. Is that you guys are building? I think one of the things I've seen at Metis that really does differentiate your entire organization apart from most other blockchain networks is that you is that while the technology is fantastic, it seems as if the prevailing sentiment and value proposition is actually the ethos or the perspective you guys have. I mean, Metis is so vision driven. It's tremendously refreshing breath of air to see that, because everybody always talks about we got highest TPS, we got lowest transactions, all these great things, which you guys do have fantastic parameters for. But the team, everybody who I've spoken with, says we're building a new economy. We are building a new type of DeFi. We're building a new type of blockchain. And when people hear that and they understand what's going on, they can understand it, and like you said, individualize or personalize what that means to them. If I'm a digital art creator, I can do it far faster and far more inexpensively on Metis. If I'm launching a financial platform, I can affect far greater amount of people in a fair way than I can perhaps somewhere else. And with the emergence of decentralized finance, let's just start there. What have you seen are some of the hallmark differences between decentralized finance in the blockchain space and finance and banking as we understand it in the real world outside?
Yeah, this is my favorite thing to teach, actually. Like I just did a workshop on this last week. But essentially, I think that we see some remnants of the traditional finance world when it comes to like crypto Twitter, because when I first joined the space, I was so overwhelmed by just like learning the new language, and it's a techie kind of world.
Yep.
But beyond just the tech, there's this like cultural thing going on where people use a different language, and it's almost like an insular community. And it was reminiscent to me of this like kind of Wall Street language, where
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes financial organizations will use these really confusing terms because they don't want it to be user friendly. They don't want the average person to know how they can, have sovereignty over their finances and make informed choices. They want you to know that you have to trust them. And don't worry about trying to figure all this out. I'll manage this for you. And while that can be really convenient and easy, and honestly, like sometimes it's the move for some people, I think that having the awareness of, what the system is doing, that there is a small group of people controlling so much with, banking regulation, access to certain funds. If there's some socio-political thing going on, like your funds could be frozen, or you could not be able to send money somewhere or receive money from somewhere. This is actually happening like right now. So the idea that in a DeFi space, you are the keeper and controller of your assets, and you will pay fees when it comes to like gas fees, but those fees are not going to a small group of people who are making all the decisions. They're going back to the individual user. You're supporting a community that is building things to support you. It's a very collaborative space, and it builds confidence and autonomy, and I think hope.
Wow, excellent. Completely aside from that, I actually want to use that quote. So Ryan, if you're editing this, supporting a community that supports you, I think really does embody the essence of what DeFi and blockchain represents, the potential here. Because it's interesting. I was talking with, I have a friend over at CNN. She's a reporter, and I met her at a conference in DC a while back. And she asked me, so Alex, how exactly does blockchain and DeFi differentiate itself from the traditional finance space, in the sense that you have that top elite, that like 1% that hold 90% of all the funds, and you have like the 99% down here that holds the remaining 10% or something like that, within those ratios? And at first I said, well, I don't know if it really is that different, right? Because you have centralization of Bitcoin and Ethereum, where a couple of validators control the majority of the pool. But as I looked into it deeper, and as I began to understand the growth of blockchain 3.0 of various L2s coming out, the security of networks is actually expanding, the scaling of it. There still are large actors in the space, but new technology is coming out to actually increase liquidity in financial markets. So financial markets become more stable. If you're a trader, you're not worried about losing 30% of your portfolio overnight necessarily. The recent market downtrend might differ, but on a day-to-day basis, you won't see those swings like you did 2 years ago. And also, because it is open source, because it is open to literally anybody with a computer and an internet feed or internet connection, you can actually now participate in this economy across every single layer, right? Imagine trying to go to a bank and say, hey, I want to run your security with you. They'd laugh at you and you walk out. But you go and you approach a blockchain, you say, hey, I want to help improve the security of your network. They say, welcome aboard. Here's a document, here's a contact, have at it. That level of openness is representative of a shift in mentality that we've seen time and time again in the blockchain space. And it's only a matter of time until that openness and that inherent trust in collaboration does begin to spill over into the broader community at large. Because I can guarantee you the type of thinking that's going on in blockchain right now isn't limited by the technology. It's the technology is reflective of that shift in mindset. So I think we're going to see a lot of this type of collaboration coming out around the world. That being said, this is a discussion about blockchain, so we'll limit it to that for now. So
yeah,
Ashley,
I think that's great.
Good.
Oh no, I was just I liked what you said. Thanks.
So is there any questions that you have about Rome Blockchain Labs? I feel like I've been kind of directing all the questions at you. And we've spoken a little bit about my philosophy, but on your end from Metis, what would you like to know about Rome?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to know a little bit about like how you got into this space. Like what was your background before you joined Web3?
Great question. So it depends on how far back you go, but starting in college, I actually had a degree in religious studies of all things. I did comparative religion for for my undergraduate, and when I left college, I understood I wasn't going. It was all secular, so I wasn't going into seminary, and I wouldn't get a job very easily with that degree. So I taught myself how to do sales. Actually, I sold home decor for a while, and then I took a gigantic leap and I went into consultative technical sales, where I began selling heavy equipment and machinery to like mines and factories and things. And I did that for a couple of years, and then COVID hit. And at my job, I was essentially 100% commission. Like it was like if you sell, I had a draw, but you had to pay that back at the end of the quarter. If I didn't sell enough, I couldn't make any extra money. So long story short, I had a couple grand up to my name, and I taught myself how to day trade stocks. And I wasn't really making any money. So I just took everything I had and I did the stupidest thing you could possibly do in investment. I put everything I had into one token. I just bought it and I let it sit there, went back to my life. And lo and behold, it ended up making a pretty good return. So long story short, from there, I took the funds. I met JD Gagnon up in Calgary, Canada. He's now in Miami, Hanukusi over in Finland. And we started Rome Blockchain Labs. And we started it actually with a project called Velox, VELOX, and it was the world's first non-custodial limit order service. So up to that point, if I wanted to trade on a DEX, I had to sit there and watch the chart, like on Uniswap, for example, way back then. It was pretty much only Uniswap and like maybe SushiSwap. I had to sit there. If I missed the trade, I was stuck. I was like, I have to wait till the price hits again. And then some limit order services came out, but you had to take your funds and then you had to deposit that onto somebody else's smart contract. And then from there, they would execute for you. We decided, and then you also had to pay a token and stake it, and it's just super complex. We said, why not just make it simple, right? Why not make it such that I can go to the website, connect my wallet, say I want to buy this token at this price, and then just I can go to sleep or I can go out and spend time with my friends. So we built it. We built a platform that was non-custodial. It was actually used off-chain calculations. So it was interblock. You could actually do like adjustments in between block confirmations back on Ethereum. And it really changed the way that we thought about DeFi. We said, wow, we should do this in other spaces. We can make DeFi simple. We can make it accessible. So we came up with Rome Terminal, where we wanted to build a platform that didn't attempt to take DeFi and kind of like wrangle it all into one. We wanted to be more like a tree, where we blossomed the branches and the leaves kind of expanded. So we can create a branch of a network, and then the very best platforms and protocols on the network can then be natively integrated. So as a trader, I can have this protocol over here and this protocol over here and use it all at the same time for absolutely free.
That's amazing. I think as far as like encouraging this mass adoption, like that's an incredible support, right? Like having to go from one DeFi platform to another is not only confusing, but it's like intimidating, especially if you have to like send funds. Cause when I first started like using my wallet, I was like, oh, I know that if I mess this up, it's gone forever. And there's like this every time. And so without having to like toggle between, I mean, it just reduces the human error and like feeling like you're putting yourself at greater risk with the million tabs open and your brain going crazy. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
What would you say, like the day trading thing, I think is something that is really, it brings a lot of people into crypto. But it's also like really intimidating to a lot of people. What would you say to somebody who's like, I want to learn something about day trading, but I don't know where to start?
Great question. Well, first, listen to the Block Slam podcast, hosted on Spotify and Apple Music. But beyond that, I would actually recommend that for people who are interested in beginning to take control of their funds, and they want to do it in the crypto space, but they're intimidated by day trading, is to actually go to staking and yield prior to trading. One of the things that is, I don't want to call it a hallmark because it does exist outside of it, but is indicative of the value of the crypto space, is the emission approach for tokens, right? So I can take an asset, I can lock it away, and then because I'm incentivizing stability on the open market, a platform gives me emissions from there. Or if I'm lending out my assets, I'm given funds like at Banky, for example. That is a much easier way of stepping into the trading space, because as long as you're using a secure platform, it's legit, like on the Roam terminal, you can stake your funds and you don't have to worry about them leaving. Of course, the price can change, they can fluctuate, but you're guaranteed, according to the smart contract parameters, that rate of return, 3%, 7%. If you're seeing 10,000%, probably stay away from that kind of that kind of project for a little bit. But it's an easy step into it. And the nice thing about that is that if you buy, for example, stablecoin and you stake it and you get those emissions, you now have profit that you can use to go and trade with. So if you have $10,000 you start with, you go stake it, that $10,000, assuming the smart contract is secure, isn't going to go anywhere. But let's say you make $100 or $20 even in returns, you can go and trade that on a decentralized exchange. And if you lose it, oh well, you just wait a couple of weeks and get more money back. That for me would be probably the easiest first step to come into the space.
Very cool. So how do you determine what projects you're going to integrate at Roam, like on the terminal?
That's also a really good question. And we've been asked that quite a few times. We look at projects that, one, have a very good level of community support, because we found that because we're not contract auditors, right? We don't do contract auditing at Roam Terminal. What we found is that, one, if you're already audited and you have a legitimate community around you, that's a pretty good barometric metric for a quality platform. We go and we talk with them, and we actually have to have a real in-person conversation. And we want to understand what is the value and approach behind that platform that wants to integrate in the terminal. So we've actually turned down projects who have wanted to be built in. So as long as they're legitimate, we then ask, okay, do they fit a very real need in the space? And for everything that we integrate in the terminal, we find that it does. You need a decentralized exchange. You need a yield aggregator. You need some type of staking platform. You need lending to have a healthy ecosystem within decentralized finance. So legitimate community, contract auditing, and then also want to make sure that they add value. Because what we found is that when we integrate only the top quality platforms into the terminal, it gives users who are interested in that ecosystem, Metis, Avalanche was our first one, Ethereum, kind of the cream of the crop, if you will, of protocols. You can go here, you can open up that platform and know, okay, there's only 3 yield platforms here. These are probably the best. I can go and just start using those. And it gives people an easy step into DeFi. You're not left wondering, okay, is this legit or isn't this legit? While we can't, rigorously back everything that we integrate because we're not auditors, we can say the greater DeFi community says this is a good project, so go and use it. And that is something it bridges the gap in a lot of people's minds. You have the real degen group who understand what's good and what's not, but that's because they do nothing else with their life. And I've fallen into that group myself before. And then you have an even greater group of people who have heard of blockchain, but they have no idea how it works, or they've done centralized exchange trading, but they haven't really done anything in the DeFi space. So how do you kind of get to there? Well, you just walk through the Roam terminal. We'll guide you to the point where there might be times you can become so advanced that you find other projects that aren't in there, come recommend them in, and we can build them and improve that experience.
That's exciting. I love the vision behind it. This whole thought process of like what it's like for someone to come in with little to no knowledge and how you can create a bridge. That's great. I appreciate that so much. this is a little bit more of a technical question. How do your
Sure.
price feeds work? Like, how do you,
Mm,
how does the data get updated on the terminal? How do I know that like the prices that I'm seeing are,
accurate.
real, just, I think I said real time is what I read.
Real
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
How does that work?
So yeah, so we actually have, this is something that as of yet, very few people know about Rome Blockchain Labs, but we actually operate an enterprise grade informatics platform. So we have servers over in Europe, in Norway, Finland. We're sending some to Germany pretty soon, where we actually operate blockchain node clusters, and we inject transaction scrapers or indexers into those nodes that extract real-time data from that. So every single liquidity movement, every single swap on a decentralized exchange gets picked up by our indexers. The data is cleaned up. We enrich it with real-time pricing. And then we can ship it over to the Rome terminal. So we've actually been able to bring down that latency from block confirmation to third party to about 2 seconds. So
Wow.
for a lot of blockchains, that's before the next block is even confirmed, you get the pricing on the previous one. And then as far as the accuracy of the data itself, we use inter-exchange pricing. So what that means is we look at a pool of stable coins, so USDT, USDC, DAI, whichever ones are the biggest on those exchanges. And then we take the network token itself. And then we compare, okay, the aggregated price of the network token and this stable coin come out to $70, $71, $70.5. We add it up, weight it, and then we get the average price of one network token based upon the ratios inside that contract. Then from there, because every single ERC20 essentially is based upon that network token in the LP, in the pool, we can then establish, okay, if 50 tokens equals this, and then 2 tokens equal this, then we get this equals $100. And voila, you have USD pricing on everything inside of an exchange. You pair that with real-time data, and you now have, a professional, high-quality dashboard available to everyone for free.
Amazing. I'm so excited about how much of that I followed.
I'm really glad, Ashley. It is my job at Rome to make these things very straightforward, very simple. Because when I first started, I would talk with my friends, with my family, and when I told them I was leaving my job, that one thought I was absolutely ludicrous, because I'm like, what's a blockchain? That's a scam. It's all Ponzi schemes and stuff like that. I'm like, all right, well, there are bad projects, but it is legitimate space. And then I did realize how tough it was. So I'm glad to hear that you followed along.
Yeah, yeah. It is. It's funny. Remember telling my principal when I was leaving the school, he was like, "You're doing what now?" And I was like, "I'm working for a blockchain technology company." And he was like, "Okay, I'll see you in a couple of months."
Yeah, so fair warning to anybody else who wants to come into blockchain. You're going to get some resistance from the people in your life, but if you pick the right project, you'll be making the right decision. So
For sure.
wonderful, Ashley. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the viewers or listeners about Metis and the upcoming projects? Anything like that?
Um, I mean, I'm really excited about, what's to come for us in the next couple of months. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to talk about most of it. So I hope that, I'm really looking forward to people learning more about reputation power. I'm excited to see, because we're not really trying to control, how people use it. We're just like, here's this infrastructure, see what you can do with it. I'm excited to see how people innovate with that in the coming months. And apart from that, like, I'm just really grateful that we were able to have this conversation. You and everyone I've interacted with on the Rome team has been awesome, super helpful. I've learned a lot from our conversation, and I really appreciate our time today.
I'm glad. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, this is by far one of the best conversations I've had in a very long time. I'm very excited for the Metis ecosystem to grow within the Rome terminal and within Rome Blockchain Labs at large, because you guys have a lot of great projects coming out, and we'll love to have them in the terminal. So on that note, thank you very much, Ashley, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks so much.